Good communication is vital to a healthy marriage. Today, on our Crossroads Parent Resource on Marriage, we're talking with licensed psychologist Dr. David Smith about how to have great communication in marriage. So unhealthy communication is a very common reason that marriages break down. So what are some healthy tools that you can give us that we can have healthier communication with each other as couples?
I think healthy communication starts with managing our own emotions. First, I think when we come together to communicate, especially about hard things, it's important to first come with a sense of like, I have emotions around this and I want to manage those emotions. I'm not going to leave it up to you to manage my emotions. And so that's probably one of the biggest things I see with couples that have struggled with it. It's the inability to manage your emotions. Next thing you know, you're shouting and yelling. Yeah. So it's really important to manage your own emotions and focus on one another. And try to get rid of expectations, get rid of your phones, just really take time to focus on one another and be a really good listener and try to understand what the other person's communicating to you. Try to stay on one topic at a time. Don't do, we're talking about, our kids. Next thing you know, we're talking about each other's mothers, okay? Try to stay on one topic at a time and just be disciplined to stay on that one topic. Try to understand what the problem is, give your opinion to that, and try to find solution. Healthy conflict looks for solution. They don't look for blaming. They look for solution. So you want to be very solution-oriented in your communication. So that's one of the best things you can do. And then also be kind and realize that sometimes some people process things and they're still realizing more things as they're processing. Like, I'm an internal processor. So when I process something, I don't process, I'll tell you what I think. And I can tell you in a few sentences. My wife's an internal processor, so it takes her, as she's processed, she's coming to more information, the more and more she talks. And the more I listen, she may come eventually around to my way of thinking, actually. And so allow for the differences in communication style, because some people take time to process it, and allow for that. Don't just get frustrated. So love each other enough to process things and to come to some kind of conclusion, which is the area of conflict. That's what I would encourage.
So something that I hear common that I think leads to a breakdown in communication is couples will say, well, you made me, or you always do this, or you never, and then that just shuts the communication down. So is there some phrases or something that we can learn, to say, okay, how do we not immediately go to blaming or using these really big statements like you always, you never, you made me?
You should.
Yeah.
That's a good example, by the way, of unhealthy communication where we're not looking to resolve, we're just looking to blame.
Okay.
And if I'm going into it, you and I having a conversation, and I'm coming in to blame you, then we're not having any conversation. Matter of fact, I won't even talk to people at that point. It's like, if you want to blame me, that's fine. But if you want to talk about it and try to understand where I'm coming from, that's different. So you have to have a heart of wanting to understand. When you go into just blaming, trust me, I've heard hours and hours and hours of that kind of stuff. It doesn't get anywhere. And I sit there sometimes and like, so are you guys getting anywhere? No, but we're getting angrier. Okay, good. So it's not working, right? Okay, good. Well, how about doing something that works? Let's not blame. Okay. And even if someone does that most of the time, they don't do it all the time. So let's be honest and stick with this one thing and try to resolve this one thing, unless you think your spouse is is somehow malevolent and trying to kill you or destroy you. They're not. We just need to understand why they're doing the same thing over and over again. Let's understand it. And when you really, it's just amazing. The power of listening. This is what I just love about the Lord. The power of listening is amazing, because now I know where you're coming from. And once I understand where you're coming from, I can decide, okay, wow, can I align with that, or do I disagree with that? If I do, then how do I disagree with that on a kind level, not on like you need to be different? Because we all can pretty much do the same dysfunctional thing over and over again. That's what a habit is. Yeah. But we want to break it. So while my wife says, well, you always do this, it's like, well, I may, but right now, let's just talk about what I'm upset about right now. And then I could talk about it. And even if it's the same thing that's been decades old, allow me to talk about it, be frustrated by it. And so there's a sense of you're honoring the other person, you're just listening to them. Say, and then when Karen just says to me, you know what, I get it. I get why that still frustrates you. It's like, okay, that's soothing. Then it's like, okay, good. That's what I wanted. Yeah. I don't expect you to change everything, but I just want you to understand why I'm frustrated. Yeah. And so there's a sense in which just understanding somebody is a solution in and of itself. You may never change your behavior, but at least understand my frustration.
That's so good. So that's a really healthy or helpful tip, like is something I know you do really well. I hear when you're having conversations is listening and then repeating back what they said so that I feel like I was heard.
Right.
So I think that's super practical is just being able to say, okay, so what I hear you saying is you were pretty hurt by the way that I responded to you.
Right.
So I think that's a healthy, that makes somebody feel like I was heard, I was listened to, and even if you don't agree with me, you validated that I felt that way.
Right. Then you have to keep repeating it.
Yeah.
I mean, it happened to me this morning. My wife said, well, why are you upset? I don't get why you're upset. Because, well, I thought we were supposed to leave at 9 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, well, I just got done from my exercising. It's 9 o'clock. My bad. And then she was upset. I was, why are you upset? And still, honey, I accept that I was wrong. She said, it was your tone. And normally it's like when I hear like it's my tone. It's like, so my words are correct, but my tone's wrong. Okay, now my body language is next, and I get really swarmy, okay? I got a grip on myself. It is Sabbath, so I got a really good grip on myself. So, okay, you know what? I apologize for the tone. Right there. So, and not that I'm all that great of a guy, by the way, but, you got to own what you got to own.
Yeah.
And that way my wife feels validated because if it was my tone, I don't, I'm not here to like bug her. Yeah. So there's essentially just admitting what you have, accepting it, and then going on.
All right, so tell me about conflict. So there's going to be conflict. It's kind of along the lines of communication, but we're going to have disagreements. My husband and I are not going to always see things the same way.
No, you don't want to, actually.
Yeah, so how do we resolve conflict in a healthy way? Because I think there's a lot of unhealthy. Either we avoid it, silent treatment, we just sweep it under the rug, we don't talk about it, or we get mad at each other so we don't talk to each other, right? That's unhealthy.
Right.
Or you shout at the top of your lungs and you're just both screaming. So those are all unhealthy ways. What are some healthy ways we can deal with conflict?
Really good.
I see it in people, not in my own marriage. Just kidding. So how can we deal with conflict in a healthy way?
Okay. So first of all, define unhealthy conflict. Unhealthy conflict is I want to get my way. That's unhealthy. Unhealthy. Healthy conflict is I want to understand you and I want you to understand me and I want to come to a solution. If I had to raise my kids with just my understanding, they'd be jacked. Okay? And they would be because I need you. And we had conflict raising our children because I was raised very German. My wife was raised very Italian. Okay? And those are very different ways. Okay? And so those are conflicts that you're going to have with raising. Is either one right or wrong? No, it's just different. So again, I'm gonna beat this like a dead horse. If we don't allow for differences in marriage, then we're not allowing for our marriage to exist. We have to realize we have different ways of doing something, and there are different ways of doing things. Sometimes there's not, but mostly there is. So I would honor my spouse by listening to her differences and realizing that, okay, it's different. But that means me regulating my own emotions first. In healthy conflict, I'm not going to take it so personal. If you don't like the way my shirt looks on me, that's fine. That's your opinion. If I start taking it personal, then I need to deal with my own issues. Okay? And so a lot of times in conflict, we put our issues on somebody else, wanting them to resolve it. Like, I'll be okay if you like my dinner that I fixed you. It's like, okay, well, let's not be so codependent. Okay, you fixed the dinner. I don't like it. It doesn't mean I hate you. I'm going to divorce you. It just means I don't like your dinner. My wife, she's get upset when I don't like your dinner. And then we really work this through. It's like, you know what? And we'd agree together what was good, what was not so good about the dinner. So we have differences. Doesn't mean I hate you.
Yeah.
But see, when we're not loving each other in a healthy marriage and really feel affirmed, conflicts become a threat. Because if our margins for loving one another are so thin, any kind of conflict's got to break that. That's why we would always be affirming one another in a loving way and encouraging one another, because it's so important that then when we do have the conflict, we have all this undergirding of love and care for one another, we can manage it. And then the other quick thing is we recover quickly in conflict. That is like, and my wife and I, if we do anything great, we recover quickly. I could be upset with my wife, we have an argument, and I'd say it's a discussion. I don't even know if we argue. We have very good discussions, okay? And loving one another through it, but then 2 minutes later, it'd be like, we're great and best friends and you can go make love. I mean, it's just, that's the way you want to recover, because the love for one another is always greater than what the argument is. So those are some of the things you want to remember in healthy conflict, is again, managing your expectations, managing your own emotions, being a good listener, and looking for a solution. and staying away from those terrible words, should, always, da-da-da-da-da-da. Even if it's true, they're not beneficial for resolving a discussion.
Right. And then another thing I heard you say is like not letting that be a value statement on because you didn't like dinner.
Yes.
It wasn't, she's a terrible person.
Right.
Or,
I'm
you
not
know,
my dinner.
Yes,
right.
yeah. So that helps with the conflict too. So it puts the problem, it's a differentiation thing. It puts the problem out there. This is the thing we're talking about. And it's different than who I am
Yes.
or what I am. Yeah.
One of the things I would do prior to talking to my wife or kids when it was something conflictual is I'd say, I want you to know first and foremost, I love you. I love you more than anything.
Oh, that's good.
I just love you. So love is not an issue. However, if you're ever late again coming home after curfew, we're going to have a problem. But I want you to know that I love you. This is a love issue. It's a lateness issue. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's how be. So there's a matter of fact, my kids, right? If I ever say like, I love you, they know something's coming. So, but you want to affirm that because everyone wants to be loved, and it's just is something that you're doing that I don't like, and it doesn't mean it's you. And so we need to affirm that part.
All right, so let's talk about unmet expectations. How do we handle these expectations? You talk a lot about that. How do we line up expectations with reality? And I would also say men have different expectations than women have, and there's some that are generic and there's some that are specific, but how can we as couples line up our expectations and not set ourselves up for failure?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is really, and this is where I'm always amazed, couples have such a hard time talking about the expectation, especially when it comes to intimacy. There's an expectation, what's the saying, men think of sex 100 times a day and women once, and that's when they're asked. Okay? And then men will get all hurt because, well, you're not, being forward, or you're not, initiating. It's like, well, if you don't think about something, you don't initiate it. I don't think of the Cincinnati Bengals right now. Yeah. I could care less about the Cincinnati, so I don't initiate it. And so, yet we blame someone. Well, if you love me, you do such and such. Well, that's a terrible statement. No, it's not true. And so we have to own our own stuff, and we have to manage our own expectations. If I want to be, and I'll be quite personal, when I want to be intimate with my wife, I am upfront about it. And I'll let her know that I like to be, and what can I do to get what I want? Okay, so I clean the house, wash the cars. So, what are those things? And every person has their own difference of what that would be. Take the kids for some time while I do this or that or whatever, or it's just not going to happen because I'm tired. And we want to honor, we want to love our spouses more than we love even intimacy. And there's different types of intimacy, I get that, but we really want to honor them by understanding what is you can and can't do. I have some people that just have planned intimate evenings, twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever it is, they do, and they just plan it, so it's expected, and so they're not disappointed, even though they allow for grace if something comes up that they can't do that, but they make sure they manage various things so they can have that special time together. Because I am big on couples being intimate, because I think it's the only thing that God gives us that we can't do with anyone else we can do with each other. So it is sacred. It is wonderful. But unfortunately for a lot of women especially, it's become abusive because it's not loving at all. It's terrible. And I think we need to look at even what are our expectations in the bedroom. What does that look like? Because there's a lot of dysfunctional intimacy going on nowadays. And we really need to clarify what is good for me, what is holy, what is wonderful for one another. So again, an expectation we have, and I see couples go decades without saying, I've been disappointed with you forever because you never fixed me breakfast. My mother always fixed me breakfast. And they've been married 10 years. It's like, seriously.
Wow.
You've been disappointed with your wife over that long?
Yeah.
I mean, can you not own that maybe you should say something, or else, put on your big boy pants and fix your own breakfast? You didn't marry your mother.
Yeah.
But we bring those into our marriages, and we really want to own what we bring in and say, is this appropriate for our marriage?
So it's being upfront and talking about what your expectations. I think something that I think from personal experience, and I've seen it, is that sometimes women expect their husbands, to be mind readers, because it feels like if you don't know, then you don't love me.
Exactly.
And so, but that's not fair. So an example of this is for the first however many years of our marriage, I would get frustrated every year with my husband on Valentine's Day, because all I wanted was a card that had like a love note, like some kind words to me. But I expected him to guess that. And every time he couldn't guess because he can't read my mind. So the one year I finally said, I'm just going to tell him that. And every year that's what he gets me. And we don't fight anymore on Valentine's Day. It's amazing when you share your expectations and you actually say it. it doesn't make him love me any less. It just means that I shared that expectation. Now he knows.
Right. It does. However, what happens sometimes when you share your expectations, and always there's a big duty when you share expectations on the other person. Because if my wife says, I'd like a note, a love note every February 14th, and I say, okay, thank you, and then I don't do it, right. Now we generally hurt the other person.
Okay.
And what a lot of people do in that time is to say, well, I forgot, or I didn't remember, and then you feel like what? I'm not a high value, am I?
Yeah.
And that's where then I need to own, are you really a high value? I mean, how many men, and I'm stereotyping, would take a bullet for their wife, but they won't give them a card on Valentine's Day. But they love them, you know?
Yeah.
There's a sense which, so we need to really be we need to be honest about how we love, and that we love how the other person receives love. Of course, that gets into love languages, but it really is important. So if it's important for my wife for me to do this, I need to make sure when she mentions that, I take responsibility, I hold that, and then I make sure I give it back when she wants it, because that's what it is to be responsible. So I love what you said, we need to share expectations, but even more when we share them, we got to make sure now, okay, I got it, I'm going to do this.
You're going to deliver on
I'm
them.
going to deliver right, because then that becomes a problem when you don't. So people say, what do you do then? Well, then we need to really look at what we value.
Yeah.
And it's not like I don't love my spouse. It's I could have ADD maybe, or this or that, but I need to then put in reminders or whatever to make sure that I do what's important for my spouse.
Right.
Because follow-up is so important. And we tend not to do it as much. And I think we need to hold ourselves, again, responsible for being the best that we could be to our spouse.